just makes me happy. I'm pretty amazed. I feel like eating some Doritos or something, you know? It's a good deal. Next thing, I guess we're going to be here to answer all of your questions. I don't know, we really didn't talk about a format for this yet. I guess that's the way it's going to go, because usually that's what happens. People just want to ask questions, and I say, you know, because I answer questions all the time. I've got a website, marijuanagrowing.com. I'm on there all the time to answer questions. If you would have some questions after here, because I always forget about the questions afterwards, you know, that I should have asked. So, and then I just ask that anybody that asks questions, that they respect the other people that may have to ask questions, and not keep asking like one question after another, make it concise. So we understand the question. That's a big deal. So that's, yeah, that's pretty much, I guess that's all I have to say, kind of like for organizational stuff now.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Jorge. Josh, what do you have to say these days to these nice people?
Hi. I'm Josh Reddy. I'm an 8-year Hempfest volunteer. This is my 4th year speaking on the Growers panel. I've spent 16 years growing cannabis professionally. In 2005, I went down to California to look for the rescheduling of cannabis from its Schedule 1 position. I'd like to see that change sometime in the near future. And earlier this year, I spent 6 months in Europe, from Norway to Spain, investigating the situation and just how it is for growers, especially in Spain. So, thanks for having me, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Josh. StinkBud, lay some karma on us, man.
Hi, I'm StinkBud, and I'm actually run a small cooperative here in Washington State, a medical cooperative, and I'm currently a medical patient here in Washington, and so I'm coming more from the medical side of things. I'm primarily known for my aeroponic type systems and stuff, and but I also have been an expert soil grower for 35 years. But I have to really bow down to this man over here on my right and your left. This is, I don't know if you guys realize who you're sitting in front of right now, but this is the guy right here, so I kind of feel a little bit humbled right now. And I've been here with, same thing with Josh, and this is another one of my heroes right here. This is an amazing panel, DJ Shorts here. I was growing his blueberry back in the 80s, and it's, what can you say, you know? So if you have any questions on regards to more of the medical side of things, you know, I can probably help you with that sort of things. If you're into aeroponics, hydroponics, that sort of thing, or if you want to learn how to make your own cloner, you can go to my website, Harvest a Pound. There's plans on there. You can build your own aeroponic cloner, that sort of thing. I also have a book called Harvest a Pound every 3 weeks, and if you want to learn how to like grow some serious herb, feel free to go to stinkbuddies.com. Also, there's I run a website that we have a forum there, and be sure to go and check out some of the other online forums, rollitup.org, those type of forums and stuff. You'll see me in there all the time answering questions and helping other fellow growers. So I'm going to hand you off here to one of the most famous guys in the entire world, DJ Shorts. This guy's a legend.
Right on. Thank you so much, StinkBud, and I've been moderating this panel for about 7-8 years. I've never seen StinkBud so humbled, so it's great. I do agree, though. This is the best panel of experts we've ever had, and I can't wait to hear what DJ's got to say.
Well, thank you, Hempfest. Thank you, Washington, for doing what's going on. Basically, I mean, in a nutshell, what a long, strange trip it's been. Really, I've been at this for about 40 years now, and watching things unfold. I predicted a long time ago, decades ago, legalization would happen if I just drew breath long enough. And when it unfolded, it will unfold in a way that nobody can predict. And that's what's happening. Nobody knows what's going to happen come January, February, which is kind of good, you know. Let's work it out. Let's hash this out and make it happen.
I like a man who can work in the gray zone. That's fantastic stuff. Now, I'm just going to kick things off before we go to the audience. I want to know, there's been so much hype over the last couple of years over high CBD strains. I want to know what you guys can tell me about the high CBD strains. Does such a thing exist? Is it stable? Is this the path of the future? And what about the other cannabinoids? So anyone who wants to start tackling that a little bit, I think that'll kick things off, and then we'll go to the audience.
Okay, well, I'll start there a little bit. First thing I'd like to point out is there's the Project CBD stand over here. It's the tent right up next to the water. Please go over there and check things out. I know, and they've also got a magazine called O'Shaughnessy's, which is probably the best, well, I know it's the best medical magazine there is, and to me it's like excellent. It's a little thick with science, but you know, if you can wade through that, it's quite good. And then they've also got the site projectcbd.org, and it's run by well, let's see, Jerry's over there now, and he'll tell you all about it, so that'll get you over there asking questions. And they've also got a list of high CBD strains. Quick thing about CBD is it seems to be a balancing factor. It's the part that doesn't get you high. So if you've got, say, a 1-to-1 ratio with CBD and THC, cannabidiol, and is the CBD, and tetrahydrocannabinol is the other part, the part that gets you higher in the equation. But one balances out the other, and the CBD is a real. It's pretty amazing. I'm liking it real well. Before I'm 59 now. I used to smoke just to get high and stuff, but now I have these pains and stuff, and it alleviates that, and I don't get blasted. I mean, it's a lot better. You can smoke it or you can eat it, and it's also really good for, it's anti-inflammatory, so I use it for back pain, and then also I can sleep real well when I consume it. But it's really funny how versatile this plant is, because remember we thought that CBD, we didn't want any, and we found that all we have to do is look just a little bit, and we're going to find varieties that are full of CBD. The first time I saw it was about 30 years ago. And we couldn't throw that pot away fast enough because it was no high pot and nobody wanted it. We just were ignorant. We didn't know what we were looking at. But we're going to see more and more of it. One of the things that people do is they, you look for the genetics where it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That seems to be what everybody wants. That's what Sativa is by GW Pharmaceuticals. There's other ratios, 2-to-1 and 1-to-3, but the 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC seems to be the big one. However, you can also have just a very high CBD strain, or variety actually, and mix it with a high THC variety in a hash and have a similar thing. So you don't necessarily have to have the 1-to-1 ratio. You can mix it yourself later. Yeah, that's kind of the basics. So I'd like to throw it open for you guys.
Yeah, I think the main thing with CBD, for myself, I've been using it now for about 7 months. You want to do it orally. You want to eat it, get it in some kind of extracted form, and a tincture works really well. I've got my mother on it right now. She's in hospice. She had a stroke last year, and we just had hospice started a couple weeks ago. And I had the hospice nurse there, and she had stopped taking all her meds, like I said, about a month ago. And I said, well, what about cannabis? And they said, okay, sure. We can't get it for her. I said, well, it's no problem. I can. So they got it on the record. And I got to say this, it's the only thing that stops the moaning and groaning. She can't speak. And I show her, I take a little orange juice, into the bottom of the glass, and I'll show her the vial and putting it in, put the straw in, and now that she knows, she can relate the relief she's getting from this medicine. She sucks it right down. The other thing, in terms of all of the cannabinoids and the terpenes, it is ratios. I mean, we heard the doctors talking up here, and I speculate the same thing. Interesting side note, the herbs I'm trying to replicate, which I've never done yet, I don't think we ever will. The tropical sativa, the Highland Oaxacan, the Highland Thai, the Colombian Gold, all those great things that were just head and shoulders above what we're smoking now. Very clear-headed, no burnout to them whatsoever. They were 7% THC at the highest. Back in the day, the strongest stuff in the 70s was Maui Wowie, and it was 10%. So something else is going on. And I think once we dial in these ratios, and it's going to be a whole bunch of different things because we're working with so many variables, we're going to find psychoactivity or relief activity in homeopathic doses once we get the ratios dialed in. Now, hopefully now that things are legal, we can do research, that can be peer reviewed by the general public. We've had to do all this, on our own, and we just recently have the testing equipment to figure these things out. So for myself, I'm just beginning to parse out what the differences are. One interesting experiment I'd like to see done, there's this whole phenomenon we know about. You take a mother plant, take 10 clones off of this identical plant, give it to 10 different people in 10 different environments, and you can end up with 10 different forms of medicine at the end. Now, let's test those. What's the difference between them, and what are the notable differences between them, and maybe we can start parsing this out, but that's what we got to do. And keep records. Do research, keep records.
Right on. I think you're absolutely right. The proliferation of labs and testing is going to make things a lot easier, I think, in the next couple of years. Absolutely. Do you guys, StinkBud, do you have something to add, or Josh, to the CBD question?
I think it's just starting. I mean, like when I think of over the last 30 years and what we were trying to do genetically, everybody was trying to get high as we can with the least amount of weed, basically. And I think that we've lost a lot of the genetics that were probably really good. And DJ was just talking about some of the old strains, like we were just talking about Oaxacan, some Mexican strains and stuff like that, and I forgot all about how good that was. And just all the stuff that we used to smoke back in the 70s, that used to get us so high, like Colombian Gold, Panama Red, and all that stuff was probably really, really good medically, but it wasn't commercially viable. It didn't produce the quantity that of commercial growers. So everything was like related to commercial grows, and it seems like we've gotten away from what we really need, and that's as far as like finding what works medically for people. Like I have severe arthritis, and so what works for me, like for getting high, is not necessarily the best thing for my arthritis. And so like I've been trying to find the right strain, but the thing is, what I'm finding is it doesn't necessarily get you the highest. It's not the easiest to grow. It's not big producers. So all this that's out there is all geared towards the commercial growers for recreation. And it's kind of like almost like now people are starting to realize, oh man, we're kind of screwing up here. We're kind of missing the boat here, and we're putting all of our emphasis into quantity and stuff, and not so much quality. And if you go online, everybody's talking about grams per watt, and I'm getting this much per light, and I'm harvesting this many pounds, but nobody's like talking about specifically how this works for their arthritis or whatever their father's throwing up 12 times a day. What works for nausea? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's simple, and it may not taste all that good, right? But it doesn't matter if you're throwing up 12 times a day. You don't care how it tastes, right? All you want to do is quit puking. And so I think like we've been focusing on the wrong things in the commercial industry. It's kind of like this. It's like a two-way street here, and it's kind of like this path where we have to make a decision. Are we going to go more medical, or are we going to go commercial? And I really honestly believe that the whole commercial thing that's going on and making it legal and all that kind of stuff is actually going to kind of hurt the medical side of things in a lot of ways. And so anyway.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is the same thing we see with agribusiness in general, that people are looking at yields, monoculture, that kind of thing, whatever is going to be dependable, without looking at the quality of the end product. So maybe we need to go back and do what the local food movement's done, which is look at more heritage strains, more smaller producing strains, and start looking at artisan cannabis production rather than large-scale factories, right? Josh, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Sorry. I believe I learned this weekend that the greatest ratio of CBD is occurring in industrial hemp cultivars, and currently in Canada, those hemp cultivars are being concentrated, and the CBD component of them taken out and being reserved for oral medicines. Let's just hope that those oral medicines do effectively hit the market. 10 years ago in BC, I really like the description of clear-headed. I think that's an apropos terminology for finding cannabis that does work for us. We tested a strain just about over 10 years ago, something by the name of Crush, which is reported as sort of African descent as far as its regionality. Back then, the CBD content was recorded at 17%, and the THC was recorded at somewhere about 11%, so much lower. Nowadays, we have such strains that are getting between 20 and 30% CBD content on the assaying that's done on them. Two things I'd like to say. One, if you look at the CBD project, one is to note it that there's all types of strains that are giving high CBD values with all sorts of ratios between THC and CBD. So it's not necessarily a regionality that there's something greater at play. That there's sort of what we'll call Sativa, there's things like Lemon OG Kush, which is one of the highest strains on that website, as opposed to what was earlier reported as clear-headed strains. So even clear-headedness doesn't make a link between the CBD ratio in the plant. The other thing that I'm learning about CBD recently that's come out is the extraction process that's being done with CO2, which is allowing a little more comfortably for us to use raw and fresh cannabis samples into the concentration process or the extraction method. And what's occurred recently is that we're getting CBD values that normally were 25% or less, have now got into the 40 and 50% category. That's sort of amazing news to me, and I just think there's probably a link there if you're after, and again that goes with the language of if you're after CBD relief or properties thereof, it goes with oral, and also looking at fresh cannabis, and that's always the message I try to convey. If you're using cannabis, try to get it as fresh as possible.
I'm gonna head to the audience and try and get some questions. I just want to say maybe we're telling our age a little bit, that all of us are looking to use cannabis with a little less punch these days. So I'm just gonna toss it out there as a suggestion why CBD is getting so popular amongst the older population.
I think I can do that. Okay, this question's for Jorge. What are your thoughts on deviating from a 12-12 flowering schedule, such as like 14 hours light, 10 hours darkness, or 10 hours light, 14 darkness, and the same with 24-hour vegging versus 18-6 and 24?
Okay, well, let's see. First, we run more or less on a 24-hour clock, day and night, and that's what plants are used to for the last, millions of years. So it's pretty hard to change that, But the weird part is, you've got, and Rob Clark just wrote a book about the origin of different varieties. I haven't read it yet, but it's got a lot to do with photoperiod too. You've got this plant that developed all over the world, everywhere from a tropical environment to an Arctic environment. And there's everything in between. You've got it daylight neutral varieties, which would be like the ruderalis. They flower according to their chronological age. And then you've got other plants, and that's at one end of the spectrum. It'd be like daylight neutral strawberries, okay, which is a real common commercial crop. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got photoperiod, or the short day plants, long night plants, but short day plants that require a long night to flower. So that's a big spectrum, and it goes, it's in a grayscale from one end to the other. So we just don't know enough about the different varieties, because say if you've got one, say an old variety like Big Bud that came from up here, that Big Bud that is grown by one person may be a different one grown by another one, and we don't even know the difference, because there's no controls. We're just, as Danny mentioned, we're doing the testing now, and we're just learning. But it kind of depends on what you've got in front of you. I wish I had a firm answer on this.
Can I jump in here? Actually, I did want to touch on this topic.
Good.
Okay, it's genotype and phenotype. Genotype is genetic makeup. Phenotype is what the environment coaxes out. It's the expression brought on by the environment. So, one thing I really want to stress, if nothing else from this panel, whenever I give a talk, hear me now, thank me later. For your bud cycle, 11 on, 13 off. Okay? What will happen first and foremost is you will see phenotypic expressions that you will never see with the 12-12, all right? Secondly, 11 light, 13 dark is the flower cycle for the tropics. And if you really want to get tropical, the veg cycle in the tropics is 13 on, 11 off, and it's a very slow change, you know, from that 13-11 to the 11-13, which is why sativa takes so long to finish. And in my opinion, the only difference, the thing that differentiates indica from sativa is flowering time. Sativa are from the tropics, indica are from outside the tropics, ruderalis is from farther north. Where if you think of how the days go, very long days up north in the summer, they get short quick. Plants got to finish up. But with the 11 on, 13 off, a little longer dark period, what I've been told, this was told to me by old timers in the 80s, that plants take in nutrient during the day. And incidentally, the plant's main source of food is light. It's not nitrogen, phosphorus, and all those other things. It's light. Those other things help it metabolize the light. So, brain fart, but...
Right. Well, you know, a couple of things about that, though. I remember, what was it, like 8, 9, or 10 years ago, I was up in Vancouver, BC, on the island, Vancouver Island, and there was a guy that was growing these plants indoors, flowering them for 1 month indoors under 12 hours of light, and then putting them outdoors in full sun, and they would continue to flower. They'd leaf up just a little bit, but they would finish. And this kind of, I haven't really looked at it much afterwards, but it worked, you know, and the plants were getting much stronger. So, you know, I have to say the tropical thing, yeah, and the reason it's, you know, the darkness is because, well, it's daylight and dark, you know, there's a half hour on both ends that it takes it to come up to enough light in order to operate, to promote plant growth, you know, the positive tropism and being able to suck it in, or I mean, to being able to take in the light. But it's still going to be all over the map until you can cut it, you know, until you can just isolate it.
I think you're going to get more bud by going 13 hours. You don't. You actually get more bud, just like DJ Short, by going with less light, because like you said, you know, it's metabolizing all the nutrients, all the stuff that's going on. People think that when there's no light at night that the plants aren't growing, and that's just a misconception. Plants are always growing, okay? So the big thing is, you know, 11 on, 13 off is actually way better. Now, I'm not saying you can't do the 13 hours, but you're just going to run into all kind of problems. You're not going to get as good a quality out of your product.
Yeah, and here's something else about this. This is really a big subject, obviously. You know, with the tropical sativas, like anything that's like super hazy, as a variety haze. Anyway, if you continually give it more light during the nighttime as it matures, it will mature much faster, because if you give it 12 hours and 12 hours or 13 and 11 like that, it won't mature as fast. You can get it down to like just 8 hours of light, and it produces more. I don't quite get it, but it does. So you just got to play with it is what it comes down to. I think.
Jorge, I was just wondering your take also on 24 hours on versus 18. I've run both myself, you know, and the only thing that I've personally seen is that it just takes longer to start flowering when you're running like 24 hours. But I haven't really found too many drawbacks, and I was just wondering if you guys have had any issues with that light cycle.
Yeah, normally people don't do the, I mean, I don't advise 24 hours. It just doesn't seem to make much difference, you know, as far as production goes. And it, like you say, it slows things down. It delays flowering.
Yeah.
So
Guys,
I see the benefit.
I want to make sure that we can take some more questions. The level of knowledge up there is unbelievable, and so thank you all so much. The thing that I think that we were just chatting briefly about is that I hope that this knowledge stays out and open, because obviously we've been growing in an underground industry. We can't keep open and honest and accountable record keeping, but now I'm fearing that as we legitimize this industry, everyone's going to hang on to this as proprietary interests. So I really hope that we can open source cannabis production to maximize the impact and the effects. I've got a question right here.
Hi guys, I'd like to ask you, I don't know if this is for DJ or Jorge or Josh, I'm not sure, the benefits of growing in different environments. I see massive benefits of growing under natural light because of the production of these, the entourage effect of all the different cannabinoids that we're using. And I wonder what your thoughts are with a blank piece of paper. If you were growing here in Washington, or I live up in BC, what environment would you grow under?
I would definitely grow under natural conditions if possible. A lot of times the greenhouse is a good idea because, well, it's easier environment to control, and you can keep it warm at night, which is the nighttime temperature is really important. Yeah, that's the thing. And then also with light, just like DJ said, you've got it's a major source of food for the plant. So the one thing that the high pressure sodium and the halide lights don't produce is ultraviolet UVB, UVA. And there's the plasma lights that produce this, and they've my friends are going with them over in Austria, in Vienna, and I did some let's see, I can't yeah, if I haven't uploaded the video to YouTube, I will do it in the next few weeks. But what they found is that UV light makes a huge difference, and that's the natural environment, and that's what these plants they grew up with their whole life, you know, and that's what they're used to is ultraviolet light. And that ultraviolet light, you know, it's the one that makes our skin tan and everything, and the UVC can kill stuff. Well, what it does for a plant is it makes the outer cutics really tough and durable, and the cells don't grow as long. They grow smaller and more densely. And what that does is it makes it really hard for pests and diseases to penetrate through the leaf. So it makes them a bunch tougher, and for some reason, this part I don't really understand, it seems to make them grow faster and put on more weight sooner. It's a huge difference. So the plasma lights are a bit expensive so far, but they will be coming down in price as soon as they produce more of them. Yeah.
Right on. I've got some questions down here at the front. I'll go over here and then over here.
Hey, I'm not sure if any of you guys have much experience with organics, but how do you feel about the monoculture that we're creating, even in an organic environment? And have you guys had any experience with intercropping and controlling diseases and such with that?
Go organics. Ow!
Somebody else? I mean, I could answer.
Yeah, sure. My outdoor crop, the last couple of years, I've used nothing. Air, sunlight, soil, water. I have to keep them low, security reasons, still getting 1.5 pounds per plant. I know I could get 3 if I let them go, but it just brings out the best natural flavor of the plant. I'm a big proponent of outdoor growing. It's my preference. It's just by far more interesting.
Yeah, I actually I kind of do both. I'm pretty much known for my aeroponic systems, that sort of thing, but I'm currently growing 100% organic, and I use Subcool's Super Soil recipe. If you guys are familiar with that, I really highly recommend it. It's, you know, right out of Jorge and right out of his book, pretty much the same thing he recommends. And I have to agree with DJ Shorts. It's just the taste, the flavor that you get. It's just better. I can get an aeroponic system that can produce 2.5 pounds of light, you know, and the soil may get just 1 pound per light. But when you look at it from a standpoint of like here in Washington where I'm growing, it only costs me $30 a month to run a light. And so if I wanted to harvest another pound, I just have to spend another $30 on a light. You know what I'm saying? So it's really easy to get hung up on grams per watt and all that kind of stuff. And sure, you can grow more bud, you know, in a smaller space with aeroponics and hydroponics and that sort of thing. But is it going to be better? You know, and you can get close with organic-based type nutrients and that sort of thing. But really, when it comes down to it, when you throw down on the table, right? You know, and you're actually smoking it, usually you'll end up picking the organic over the synthetic nutrients and stuff like that, just because of the flavor. And then again, this is a very big debate. I'm going to be doing some side-by-side testing and some actual scientific tests.
And I'd add that the research out there is really clear. Research that's been done on terpenoid production in fruit showed organics produce more terpenoids. That's what gives, of course, cannabis its smell, a lot of its taste, but it also has therapeutic properties. And Canna has also shown through their research that their organic fertilizer actually produces a better THC ratio per plant. In other words, higher THC than they do with their non-organic. So I think that as research builds up, we'll get more answers to those questions too.
My real question was actually about intercropping.
Oh, the question was about intercropping as well. So if there's anyone who wants
companion
to speak to
planting?
that, yeah.
Basil, tomatoes. I have great luck with onions. Go well in there. We need to do the research on this. There's a couple of books. Carrots love tomatoes. The companion planting. Definitely basil and tomatoes.
And if you're doing a forbidden fruits, I'd add tobacco, which is a great pest control method as well. You can do your forbidden fruit garden as well.
Marigolds.
Exactly. I've got a question up here.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here in front of you guys. Can you talk a little bit about maintaining genetics? You pop a seed you really like and you really want to maintain that. Is it quickly, does the quality degrade if you start taking clones of clones, and how long? I mean, I've had mother plants for upwards of a year or two, but what's your kind of some tricks of the trade to maintain a mother plant?
Usually what happens is you get some kind of a sickness in the plant that you don't see, and normally it's powdery mildew, and it gets weak and you don't realize it. So you need to go back to seed fairly often, every year or two. And I wouldn't keep a female plant. You can keep them a long time, but just the logistics of stuff, if you've got it in say a 5-gallon pot or a 20-liter pot, 19-liter pot, it's going to run out of space to grow, and this is an annual plant, and you're pushing the heck out of it if you're growing inside. So it's hard to keep them much over a year, and I know...
Well, my Flo is 23 years old. I sprouted her in 1990, and it's not the same plant. You don't keep the same plant in the same bucket. What I've learned a while ago is rejuvenate every year outdoors.
Okay.
All right, so I let my 4-gallon pot mother plant that I've been working all year come late April. She's worked, she's tired, and she'll go out outside, and this is in Northeast Oregon.
And you put her in the soil outside,
in the
soil, ground, not in the pot.
And you want to rip all the bottom roots off. Any dark roots, even if you're doing a small transplant, dark roots, just rip them off.
Why is that? Tell why.
Well, the mold will develop in the sickly roots. Roots should only be bright white. If they're not bright white, just get them out of there. The plant will make new ones and put them out. So I get the roots off, I get it in the ground, then come late July, I mean, she might be down to 3 leaflets when I put her in, and then she'll go to 5 to 7, sometimes 9. All the bugs are gone, all the mold is gone. I'll take that clone late July, early August, and that's next year's mother. And they seem to have a memory for it, like, just hold on. They seem to be getting a little healthier every year. And it is strain specific. There are some strains that the more clones you take off them, it does drift from there. But as far as my blueberry and my Flo, no. And incidentally, the F4 blueberry and Flo mothers are available. I'm not exactly sure where. They're here in Washington, yeah. And they're in California and Michigan.
DJ Short Seeds available in Washington?
Yes, well, you have to just talk to me. I'll be at the little question and answer tent afterwards.
All right, we've got a question back here.
Again, like the last gentleman, it's an honor to talk to you guys. I have a couple quick questions regarding nutrients these days. I'm an ebb and flow man myself, and I've read in certain magazines that the phosphate mines are being depleted. Now, one, is that true? And two, do you guys have any organic solutions to go around this?
You know where the demand for phosphorus goes? To the military. That's who is mining a lot of the back 102 for the phosphorus in there. So just a side note on that. I don't know what alternative to use.
Boy, for phosphorus, I mean, you've got, it's just, you can get rock phosphate, but really the guano is the best. And you can, and especially if you do, well, the back guano is the best. But if you do it long term, you know, the thing is the rock phosphate, it takes so long, and you've got to get it in a real flowery form. And it's only like what 3% available at within a year. That's not much. So it's if you can build it outdoors, it's great. And to pick up again on this organic question, when you grow in a pot, it's just hard as hell to grow organically to get any kind of a soil movement going in there, because you keep changing the pot or changing the soil, and every time you disrupt the soil, you disrupt all your organic activity. So all you can do organically is just dump it on the top, mix it up and dump it on the top. People have had real good luck with those, the activated aerated compost tea, where you put a lot of air in a compost, and then you essentially grow the bacteria and the microbes and other things really quickly with the extra air, and then putting that on the soil and actually on the foliage too. That makes things much more useful. They become they're able to be taken in quickly. But as far as building organic soil, you've got to do that. You've got to do that outdoors, and that's the way to go. But phosphates are a tough one, because just like DJ said, they use them to make bombs or
Right.
to blow stuff up.
We've got one more question back here.
Yeah, so I enjoyed the discussion about CBD plants, and speaking as a member of the elder set, I have become an enthusiast for CBD myself, but I wanted to talk about a different dimension here, the Sativa versus Indica. Well, we used to think that Indicas might be higher in CBD, and the Sativa is more THC oriented or something like that, and it turned out to be total baloney. There seems to be no relationship whatsoever. So my question is, I know that Sativas and Indicas have some phenotypical differences as far as your growers are concerned, it matters, but is there any real difference that we can pin down as to the actual users of the medical effects and the other effects? Is there anything identifiable about Sativa and Indica?
Boy, maybe. In general, like the old thought, I haven't read Rob's new book. Mel Frank has, and we talked about it a little bit, but I haven't done my homework, so I couldn't give you a good answer on the newest thing there. He says that Sativa and Indica are kind of like misnomers. When the Indian hemp came up, you know, that was a name, Indian hemp, and that's what the British used for hemp that came from India, and then Sativa, you know, it's a common plant. So it all goes way back to Linnaeus, Linnaeus, I guess is the way you pronounce it in English. Linnaeus, the Swedish guy, the botanist that made the classification of the plant kingdom. He only knew about the common one he called Sativa because the communications weren't so great there. So that's how we got stuck with these two different names. And then after that, there's, you know, subgroups too, the Afghani, but generally the difference that they had distinguished between them was pretty much growth habit. You know, the Sativa was taller, much larger root system, and thinner leaves, and the photoperiod that it takes to flower, it takes longer. But boy, it's actually kind of confusing to me. I used to think I knew what was going on, but I'm changing my mind now. I don't know. I mean, do you have much to add?
Yeah, again, the only physical difference I can determine between Indica and Sativa is flowering time. Sativa take a long time. It takes 16 to 18 weeks to finish. It's a Sativa. And the more north you go, then it's an Indica, and then it's a ruderalis, and quicker flowering times. One other structural difference I've noted is tackiness. tackiness. Now, this is a whole different subject, and I think Robert Clark would agree with me. The glandular stalk trichome, in my opinion, was bred strictly for hash production outside of the tropics. Okay, the old sativa, those old Thai, when you looked at them, they didn't have the big bulbous trichome we're accustomed to. They had a lot of hairs, cystolithic hairs, that secrete oils directly onto the surface of the leaf. Now, if you think of hash production in the tropics, the main form of hash production is hand rubbing. Outside of the tropics, it's some sort of sieving. The only exception is Nepal. Nepal's technically not in the tropics, but it has the elevation in the high UV. So tackiness, stickiness, I think in those oils being directly on the surface of the leaf and interacting with oxygen and interacting with the atmosphere are causing some of these differences.
I'd also add that if you want to know more about that breakdown, Carl Hillig's work is amazing, looking at taxonomic analysis for cannabis. I highly recommend it. It's available online. And I just published some research on strain symptom correlations. It's available at philippelucas.com. I hope that you'll all join me in bowing down to these amazing poor growers and cannabis experts. But you know, this is a packed room. I'm so glad that you guys were here to listen to some of this wisdom. We're going to ask these folks to make themselves available at the Knowledge Hut, which is right there. I'm pointing to it. If you have more specific questions, these guys are going to be available. So thank you so much to Jorge, to Josh, to StinkBud, and to GJ Short. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for this amazing panel.